Alrighty, welcome to NYCOS. And this is 9 news nuggets you need to know. Repeat because I messed up the audio last time. I want to apologize for that. And wanted to let you know that this is a series we're going to be doing ongoing to allow players to pick up information about the campaigns that are being run in the world of NYCOS, both for in being involved in play and for understanding the context of the news reports that we do every week. Tuesday nights, we generally do a NYCOS News Nightly Network show, and we provide information about the 4 or 5 or 6 campaigns that are running concurrently and contemporaneously in the world of NYCOS to let players from each group kind of get a feel for what's going on in the others and to provide perhaps some Easter eggs for players both who are following the stories and in particular are wanting to know more about the campaign that they are actively in. Now tonight we're going to be talking about the iterational origin and the background stories about the Black Book of Adam. Now we are going to be reading 9 news nuggets, but we're going to be basically doing them in sections. So this first section of the iterational origin of the Black Book is to say, and actually in advance of that, we want to provide somewhat of a disclaimer. As a Christian and as a role play gamer, I wanted to include a function or a facet of my personal faith in my game sessions. And one of the ways I've done that is to incorporate the actual use of a book, namely the Bible, in game. And the dynamic of it was such that originally we had players who were regularly used to coming from the world of Earth, from Terra, into the gaming world through various methods, whether it be magics or whatever. And inevitably, 1 or 2 or even more of the group members would be coming from Earth, and some of them would, of course, be coming mainly because of the attractiveness of the concept. Back in the early days of role-play games, there were a considerable number of book series that utilized this concept of a individual from terra firma going to a fictional realm someplace, either in space or in time, and therefore utilizing contemporary realities, things that were actually in our world conceptually in those other places. Simple examples are a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court and other time travel type of episodes, A Wrinkle in Time and such, where you are going to visit an alternate location, but you want to be able to utilize information and data from your real life in that scene. And so therefore, in the case of personas traveling to NYCOS, some of them would inevitably bring books. And so the first NYCOS news nugget you need to know is that the existence of the Book of Adam, which is the Bible in its various forms, was actually something that was brought to the game by my players. It was not originally in my personal intent to have the black books available, but as players would decide to bring them with them, perhaps as a story element, perhaps as a security blanket, or perhaps maybe they were intentionally trying to evangelize the world that they were coming into. In whatever fashion, the books that got here were brought by players on their concepts. It was not something that was imposed or invoked by myself. The advantage of it being from an outside source, therefore, by someone else bringing it, it was therefore left to interpretation what the impact on the game would be, because it was not in my original concept. And therefore, the functionality and the utility of such a book has become a element of the mystery, if you will, of the world of NYCOS. And even from the earliest iterations, such a document was available. And quite often we'd end up in rather deep discussions in game and out of game concerning the actual text of such a document. So that's the first of the news nuggets you need to know, is that it was not from the Game Master. It was not something that was imposed, if you will. The second thing to talk about in terms of the iterational origin, and this is be the second of the news nuggets that would be useful, is that the text of the documents used were actually verifiable and usable because we would use an actual version of the document that was said to be in the game. So, for example, the first version was a traditional King James version. This would not be the New King James, but the 1635 King James version of the Bible. And therefore, when we would have individuals quoting or inferring from passages, they would be going from that point. Some of them, for example, were players who used names from the document and then called themselves of the book. So Nicodemus of the book was one of the first persons in NYCOS to actually carry it. And so that also, by the way, these 9 news nuggets are actually clues or cues that players in the modern 9th iteration of the game can use in game if they've gotten it from this episode. So make sure that if you are familiar with the players in the world of NYCOS or know ways to get a hold of the players of NYCOS, let them know that they can actually utilize this information. And drawing from, for example, this portion of the video, the number 2 news nugget is that Nicodemus was the first person to actually bring such a book into this game. And in a later part of this episode, I'll tell a little bit more details about Nicodemus to make it more rich, so stick with us as we go on. By the way, at this point, if you haven't yet, and if you like what you're hearing and would like to be a part of our community, make sure you click on the links below, like, follow, subscribe, and all the good things. If you subscribe to the Twitch channel to watch these videos, there are no advertisements that you have to look at anymore if you subscribe. So that's an important point there. All right, going back finally to the third news nugget you need to know that comes from the iterational origin is that each of the volumes that arrived in NYCOS arrived in an even number iteration. So that will give you a hint of how many iterational copies there have been that are involved in the game right now. Ironically, the only one that does not fit that. So the first 3 came from even numbered iterations. The 4th actually came from the 7th iteration. So that will give you the full explanation for the 4 volumes that are established to have been in the world of NYCOS as of the 8th iteration. So that iteration 7 version was actually brought in by a person from, and this is the point 3 I already made, which was they came in the even numbered iterations except for the 4th, which came in iteration 7. So that's the news nugget that you need to know from this portion of the video. The disclaimer is that there is no justification or purpose for players to subscribe to or even read the documents themselves, but the use and such of the game, of the books in game, are not intended to be of a moral or religious judgmental basis, but simply are a mechanical tool and a fun little twist that allows a little bit of Terran reality to slip into the realm of NYCOS fantasy. All right, so looking at this from the other side just a little bit, we're going to talk about the benefits of the Black Book and how each of the benefits is itself a news nugget that you need to know about the document. As we've said, the Book of Adam, as the book is known in NYCOS, is an iterational version of the Bibles available here in Terra. So the first one, as we've mentioned, which, as I described, came in the first iteration, the first even-numbered iteration was the King James version, and that was brought in by Nicodemus of the book. The second was ironically brought in by accident because someone determined that they brought a selection of books from a religious facility that they engaged with in a pre-game session. And what I mean by that is we were actually doing a session 0. A player looted a building that they were in, and in that box of relics they found a book once they got to the world of NYCOS. And that book they actually couldn't read because it was a Latin Vulgate iteration of the Bible, which meant that it did not include the New Testament. It was the Latin Vulgate as it would have been available in an iteration. So therefore, the second Black Book of Adam was actually written in Latin, and therefore was fundamentally unread, even to the point of its destruction, although it was quoted a couple of times, and that's a completely interesting thing. But that second iterational book, which came in the sequentially second even number, I'm not going to give the actual iteration name because that might be flagged by my players who are looking for that. But from an Easter egg standpoint, the Latin Vulgate was brought into the world accidentally as part of a shipment of items, which included a candlestick. I probably need to say no more when I referred to the Latin book, and a collection of beads that included at the end of it a cross, and so that rosary as well as the candlestick were both important to the story elements. And it was actually in that iteration, in the fourth iteration, that the recognition or identity of the object falling towards NYCOS in the beginnings of the iteration was dubbed the candle. All right. Therefore, the fifth news nugget you need to know, the second one that comes from the benefits of the book, is that it does indeed destroy angelic and demonic hosts. If one rightly or correctly interprets the various scriptures, they can be used in combat to actually counteract and eliminate enemy forces of the extreme ends of the spectrum. But it cannot be used. Now note this. This is the news nugget you need to know, is that the book of Adam, regardless of its iteration, cannot be used to actually eliminate anyone of the iteration. So any being who is of NYCOS cannot be directly destroyed. However, any being that is not of NYCOS can be destroyed or eliminated merely by searching the document and finding appropriate texts to do so. More information on that later. The third news nugget you need to know about the benefits of the book is that it is restorative and has everything to do with the concept of regaining faith, regaining confidence, regaining standing. And all of these can be done, again, through utilization of the document itself. In terms of the fiction of NYCOS, on the other hand, there are also passages that actually can do damage to the things and existence of the world of NYCOS itself, although not normally promoted. Nonetheless, players can determine what the effects are within the document itself and can therefore use it to alter and change and perhaps destroy elements of the world of NYCOS as well. But we'll go more into that in a later edition, and when we're talking in particular about how it's being used by the players in the game, because I do not want to remove player agency by stating what can and cannot be done. The final benefit of the Black Book that we want to talk about is that it does have the capacity to transport a persona back into the realm of terra firma, but only by revoking a player's agency and sending them out of the game. And there's only one particular way to do that, and I'm not going to go into what the details are, but do know that a benefit of the book is that you can actually invoke a departure for a persona, and it does not necessarily mean an engaged person. You could actually use it on an NEP to basically send them to terra firma, but that's a completely different specific use thereof. And again, I'm not going to reveal how that works because the players will discover this inevitably on their own. Okay, next we're going to talk about opportunistic misuse. The value of a document that is established to be speaking directly of the words of God can be misused. And we're going to now talk about the NYCOS news you need to know about the misuse. And the first and foremost is that the very existence of an extra NYCOSian volume that can be read by all species of NYCOS is itself very powerful, and utilizing it emblematically makes it arguably one of the most powerful devices in the world of NYCOS, even beyond the items known as the weapons of power. So this document can be used in a misuse to actually drive military action, violence, aggression, warfare, all the things that could possibly be invoked by its misuse. And the news network, the news nugget you need to know about its misuse is that 100% of the iterations where persona utilized the book, someone inevitably misuses it for these kinds of causes. So in some ways it acts in the meta of it, it sort of acts as, for example, the Ring of Tokens masterpiece to drive the players to do things that are untoward simply because it gives them the power to do so. Just as I'm trying to remember names right now, as Isildur had done with the ring, so could it be done with the Book of Adam in the NYCOS realm. And 100% of the times the books have fallen into the hands of persona, they have done so. That doesn't mean they will this time, and I don't want to go any further detail on that one, but just realize that's the seventh news nugget you need to know. The next portion of knowledge about the opportunistic misuse is that the alternative option seems to only be the destruction thereof. And in the 8th iteration, that was what was accomplished. They actually had found the means to eliminate and destroy all of the copies of the document, therefore avoiding the misuse of it. But then that itself is the next news nugget, is that destruction of the volumes isn't the solution to the problem, because the source itself is a replicable. In other words, persona, if they've had it long enough and endeavor to do so, they can make additional copies of this document. And so if for example, in this iteration, the document is in the hands of someone nefarious, they could be making additional copies of it, and each copy will have the same effect if they were diligent in the creation of that document. Now, in this case, it's already been leaked, as with my last video, that the ninth iteration personas do have a copy. There is a volume. They've already wrested it from its secure location, and now it's in a vulnerable position. So I'm going to leave it at that and leave the rest of that to you to determine. And then finally, our last, if I believe I counted correctly, our ninth or ultimate news nugget that you need to know is that the player and or players who come in contact with the document also will have a direct conversation with me about it, so that it will never be a situation where we will ever allow for the misinterpretation or malfeasance against the document other than its destruction. And the destruction of such a document is not a sinful act per se, whether written or otherwise, but it is a very serious decision to make to get rid of the Book of Adam. And although it does secure the iteration and prevent the misuse of the item, it also denies the potentially life-saving virtue of the document itself. So we'll go with that. So now we're going to talk just a little bit. This is not part of the news nuggets. This is actually just a separate thing. Proper care and use of the Black Book. As a Christian, I endeavor to establish and maintain the concept that the Bible, as written by the variety of authors that did create it, are the inspired Word of God. And as a role player, I realize that in some ways someone might see me as playing with fire by allowing such to slip into the fiction, but the document itself is integral to my personal belief structure, and therefore I am endeavoring to revere it and give it precedence in society and in culture, and give the players the opportunities to discover and revere it. As a matter of fact, one of the endeavors that I always attempt to do is find someone in the game who has an ardent desire to discover and bring such a book to the fore, and therefore endeavor to have that person become known as a seeker. And so if a player is given the vaunted naming convention as a seeker, it means that I esteem that they will be doing due justice to the document, and will be attempting, at least to the best of their ability, to secure it with the idea of maintaining its coherency and not to be seen as a false weapon. I'm reminded of a passage in the Old Testament that referred to the capture of the Ark of the Covenant, in particular, a known relic and identifiable item to the Hebrew people, the Israelites. And that capture led to a bunch of shenanigans, shall we say, and great punishment fell upon the people who stole it, and also to those who mishandled it along the way. And it's akin to that we put the book in the story of NYCOS. So I just wanted to establish for those who might be of a Christian background or a faith community background that might consider what I'm doing to be itself sacrilegious, I want you to provide information that such is not the case, that I am instead attempting to provide a methodology for at least a discussion of such to occur in my role-play games groups. So, now that you have the 9 news nuggets you need to know about NYCOS's Book of Adam, there's a lot of room for speculations. I'd love to see a healthy conversation in the comments section concerning what a group should be doing with the with the book of Adam, whether or not there are any particular passages within it that you find would be particularly useful in a role play session. That would be a great conversation to have. And also to provide you for information on how you can become a part of the community and individually become a part of the story and perhaps even a seeker within the system. If you check out our Patreon account, patreon.com/NYCOS, you can become a part of our community by sponsoring and supporting our efforts and my campaigns in particular. And when you do, you gain access to being a participant in the campaigns we run on the weekends. So for more information on that, check out NYCOSRPG.com for the property itself and for our information on the campaigns and how you can become a part, patreon.com/NYCOS. I want to thank you for having been here tonight, and we will see you in the next episode. We do record 5 days a week, so I'd love to see and talk to you the next time. Have a great night.